Hi folks. Remember when the healthcare legislation was making its way through the Congress of these here United States of America? Many people who opposed it said one of the reasons they opposed it was because there was death panels in the legislation. And a lot of them, they're Democrats in the news media said, "You're nuts. There's no such provision in that legislation." To which many of us said, "Really?" Sarah Palin criticized it, and everybody criticized Sarah Palin. But if it was not in there, how come it was removed? How do you remove something that isn't there? The magical Democrats. The original provision in there provided for doctors to hold end-of-life discussions with elderly patients, as not to create a burden upon the medical system or their families, to discuss ways of avoiding costly and lengthy medical procedures. And this discussion was to take place every 5 years. Well, it was thrown out of the legislation, and the legislation barely passed when they threw that part of the legislation out. So now the regime, President Barack Hussein Obama, Democrat, he inserted it right back in there by executive decree. That's what he did, kids. Much like regime leaders do and dictators. No regard for the legislative process, no regard for representative democracy or government as we used to have here in this country. None whatsoever. But this insertion is better than the previous one, only because the previous one, the old bats, was discussed the end-of-life procedures every 5 years. Now we old fogies, we're going to have to discuss it with our doctor every year. Yeah! The doctor's going to say, "Tony, you need that procedure? You need to have the government spend all that money? The wear and tear on your family? Forget about it. Just go out and die, will you?" Now, in essence, it's for Medicare patients. I'm not on Medicare yet, thank God. And also, it's voluntary for the doctors to discuss it. However, there's an incentive. Every time they discuss it once a year with a patient, the government is going to pay the doctors for it. Now, I'm a doctor. I'd be stupid not to discuss it every year with my patients so I can get the money. Right? And after all, they're not in practice just for their health. For my health? Anyway, they're in practice, yes, for people's health and also to make money. So this was inserted in there, not by legislative action, by executive fiat. That's what it was, totally ignoring the will of the people. There's the person who inserted it in the original legislation was one of them there Democrats from the 3rd Congressional District in the state of Oregon by the name of Earl Blumenauer. That's the guy, kids. Well, now he's notified that the regime inserted it back in, but even more potent this time. He sends out an email to close friends and supporters about this, and he tells them basically, hush, keep it quiet. We do not want the blogs to know about this or the news media. Shh. That's what he said, kids, in the email he sent out. But guess what? He was foiled. The New York Times got a hold of that email. They published it and it has been republished in other newspapers across the country, specifically right here on the front page of the Dallas Morning News. There she is, kids. You're gonna die. Ha ha. Right here. You see? He didn't want the news media to know about it because he did not want us, we the people, to know about it because they have no respect for representative democracy or we the people. What is interesting about this is the New York Times published it. Normally the New York Times adheres to the orders from their overlords in the Democratic Party. I'm a little perplexed as to why they published it, but very grateful that they did. So now he sends out the email telling them not to forward it because people like this may find out about it. But he has in this email, he writes, the longer this goes unnoticed, the better the chances are of keeping it. See? The longer the people do not know about this, the better their chances are of keeping this intact. They don't want you and I to know what they're up to. This was supposed to be an open government. So said Nancy Pelosi. So said President Barack Obama. 2 Democrats, kids. It was supposed to be open. This wasn't going to be the politics as usual or the politics of the past. And I think they're right about this. Very rarely have we seen a president act like a regime leader, totally ignoring the will of the people. Very rarely have we seen this, kids. We're living through history, eh? So maybe he did us a favor. Alright, we'll see you folks. God bless you. God bless America. And God bless the nation you live in if you don't happen to have death panels. We'll see you folks.